Mrs. Cat has come to Satsang. But the top of Chris's head is an ear.
Hey, this is my first time joining, but I've watched a good number of the Satsangs, so I'm excited to be here.
Good, thank you. What's your cat's name, Chris?
This is Luna. She's a girl. About 2 years old. 2.5.
And a little bit overweight, maybe?
Yes. She loves food. I wish you could hear her purr.
And Eddie's having satsang from Grand Central Station. You have to free yourself from words, from concepts, from your own past, especially your identifications, what you identified with as being you or not you. And take a look at those identifications again. Something changes when you become a deep meditator. The world doesn't seem so real anymore. The reality rests with you. There's such a relief that one feels when the mind stops, leaves you alone, doesn't keep pestering you. Instead, you can turn the mind on and off. And if you prefer, you can still sit mindlessly. It will feel like you're learning nothing, but you are. You're learning that all these activities out here really have nothing to do with you. But the other thing that happens is you're free of them. They don't bother you anymore. The mind It's a wonderful thing to waste. Let your mind waste away. Because you've been students so long, everything revolves around your minds. But if your mind doesn't pay any attention to the concepts and words in the world, your world gets radically simplified and becomes nothing more than perceptions. And when you accept it as perceptions, you no longer have a model of the world and of life. Your mind stops and watches the world wordlessly. And when you can do that, something happens, and you're able to make direct connection to the external world without using words of any sort. You just sit in silence and you watch what your eyes are watching, but in silence. And in silence, it seems to lose its reality. There's no longer TV sets out there or Zen classes or a worldly job. All of that disappears. Sometimes that can make you feel anxious, like, if I'm not here anymore, who's in charge? I remember that experience happening for a rather long period of time, because it seems like there's no one in charge. So people invent God, a benevolent God, to be in charge. Other people have to stick in a devil just to make things interesting. But it's not necessary to have a devil or a God. There just is perception with mind and without mind. Perception without mind takes you to a different level of reality that is more prosaic in a sense than you're used to, because there's no longer a mind entertaining you with all the details about the subject that it normally would. But the other thing you begin to feel is a deep sense of peace. Your concepts have been taken away from you. Now there's no directive. You can do what you want. You don't have to get up at 6:30 in the morning. You can get up at 9 or 10 if you want. You no longer have to dress to go to work or go to school. You can sit in your underwear all day long. Or even take that off. and walk around nude in the house all day. You go to the door nude when somebody knocks to shock them into, I don't know what. But when the mind stops and you begin looking at the world, it becomes very different. It doesn't feel real in the sense of how we usually speak of the term of real, of having a body of reality. Because what we see without words is just the perception, not the interpretation. So we don't know whether we're looking at dwarves in the bottom of hell or gods on Olympus. Those kinds of judgments come afterwards when the mind starts evaluating and trying to figure things out again. But what if you didn't have anything to figure out? What if you could take a break? No more being in control. Just watch without mind. Let me tell you, watching with mind can be very boring. My mind, when it starts intruding itself on me, is usually busy explaining things to me that I need to be aware of. So that invisible teacher inside was talking about something. He had no idea what he was talking about. He was talking about the made-up world that most of us live in most of our lives, where everything is cut and dried. There's a schedule for everything. Time to go to bed, time to get up. Time to feed the cats or the dog. Time to watch the news or watch a movie. And a time to let all of that go and to go to sleep. You know, at first, it's rather difficult to be without mind because you no longer have an inner guide telling you what to do. And instead, you'll be sitting there looking out the window or at a candle by the wall. And that's all you see and all you're aware of, except for sounds that could trickle in from outside. There's nothing to do anymore. My mother lived to be a few days short of 100 years old. Mostly she was at rest, watching those television shows with all the people and escapades, and I don't know what they call them, I forget. But she was always contemplating the presence of death, because she had seen so many people die in her life, including 2 husbands. Some people fret the last day in their life about what has been dealt them. Do you do that? Do you bitch about your past? Tom doesn't look like he bitches about anything. He looks like he's dead. The dead don't bitch. And if you can die before you die, more power to you. I can't really tell you how good it feels to operate without a mind. It's a kind of unique experience you have to experience before you know what to do with this experience of nothingness. Because that's what there is. There's nothing there inside. There's only the raw image outside, and no longer any reaction to it on the inside. So this is a new way for you to experience the world around you. It's no longer threatening or inviting. There's nothing there except you and that object. And you can't be verbalized. I remember a lot of people when I first started in spirituality were talking about all the time how their way of being was so superior to everyday life of the normal adult in America. The meditator isn't bothered by anxiety because the mind can't picture the future anymore, nor does it even try. I guess I could say that you become increasingly at rest in your own experience of yourself in the world. And no matter how much you investigate yourself, you never can find anything very much to conclude about yourself, because you're experiencing deeper parts of yourself and its interaction with the world through no mind. The mind is gone. The mind can come back after the experience. Mark just caught a pretty girl walking by. He was fixated on her, totally missing what was going on here. You're a bad boy, Mark. Michael's not here. First time I think he's ever missed. Vesselina, is he dead?
He's asleep. He's probably the battery of his phone died and couldn't wake him up.
Just be aware of yourself. This requires you to be able to, in your imagination, turn your sight around and look into your body. Look into your head. Look at where the third eye is supposed to be, or the crown chakra. And then begin to drop down into your inner image of your own body, which you can then feel inside your own body. How does it feel to be you? What do you feel like? And after a long while of doing the sitting, you won't ask yourself that question anymore. Because you know there's no answer. The experience of the world and of yourself without the intermediary of an interpretive mind leaves you free of the mind. And when you're free of the mind, it's a very different experience of the world and being in the world. Sal always wears a shirt that says happy. He wants us to believe that he's happy, or else he's pretending to be happy so that he doesn't feel sad and shoot himself. I give you permission to shoot other people to make yourself happy. I guess how I can state what it's like to live without mind is peace. The mind's not there to disturb you anymore or to hector you about what you should be doing or should have done. In other words, your mind is still now. and you're with it in the present until you start thinking. And if you notice, the energy of your existence will go up into your brain, into your head. And when you stop thinking, your attention drops down into your body. And you have a new center of gravity, more in the chest or the gut area, rather than in the eye area or your brain area. And what that gives you is freedom from the mind. And freedom from the mind results in peace. I'm assuming you're in good physical condition. You don't have a 6-inch knife sticking out of your back. You don't have rheumatism to the extent you can't move without being in unbearable pain. But when you're without mind, the external world is very different. It's neither friend nor foe. It's just there. And you can't really attach any quality to it because it doesn't fit. But when you're in mind, it's so easy to talk about everything and anything as having qualities: good, bad, heavy, not heavy, sweet, sour, energetic, exciting, boring. But when you have no mind, at first, the experience is quite amazing. You say, oh, fuck. I don't have my mind. Where did I put it? Where'd it go? I don't know what to do anymore. And that's the mind still intruding, remarking on your own situation and making you feel like the thinking you is the real you. But it's not. When you look inside, you become aware of the phenomenal you, which is the body and its functioning, the breath coming in and out, feeling of stress or strain on the muscles, feeling of pressure from your cushion or the wall. But an empty mind, there's none of that anymore. You just are. What I used to do was turn my attention inward into the darkness, the inner darkness. Like when you have to close your eyes and look into the chakra in your forehead. And then in my imagination, I would drop downwards into my heart and into my gut. And there I'd stop. And it was like the light of the mind was turned off, replaced by the inner light of the experience of consciousness without the mind. I remember when I graduated from Case Western Reserve. I was totally without any understanding of what I should be doing in life. I toyed with the idea of becoming a mercenary in Africa, but I can't stand wet heat. But during that period of time, there were these mercenaries going all over the world, tiny little wars. I thought that sounded pretty exciting. But I couldn't find a war I liked. So I just continued going to college, far, far beyond the usual time to be in college. When I left, I found out in a fairly short period of time, the external world also forgot about me. Before, when I was an undergraduate and first became a graduate student, I thought of myself as hot shit. I was smart, top of my class, high school. When I got into college, and the classes were different and harder. But there were very few classes I liked. I liked the economics classes. I liked the philosophy classes. It even got me into reading Eastern philosophy, where they talked about enlightenment. And like most of you, I read Yogananda. Autobiography of a Yogi. And he talked about such miracles. But after I entered spirituality and learned to meditate, I found no miracles in life anymore. Because the idea of a miracle is an idea. Wow, how amazing. But when I was without mind, there wasn't that sense of amazement anymore. I was just witnessing experience from a position of being just beingness. These are the kinds of things you'll be dealing with when you do meditation. The question, who or what am I, is always present, even if you don't articulate it. If you ever find an answer, will you please email me and let me know you find out? I really want to know who I am still, because I can't find anybody here that knows what I'm doing or where I'm going. And if I thought about it, I'd be very confused. But I don't think about it anymore, because I've gotten to a place where I don't give a shit. I can just rest in myself, my body as it is. And the feeling now is of utter peace. I no longer understand a thing, because I got off the path of trying to understand things. Now the world has nothing to do with me, because I'm not interested in the world. And it says, shit, I'm not interested in you either, Ed. You're unwanted. The world doesn't want you, not unless you want to enter the world of normal humanity, which you find around you all the time. In which case, your mind will make up something. Your mind is not your friend. It's always harassing you to do something else or do something different, or to take a look at yourself and find out what the pure person would do, or the devout person would do, or the spiritual person would do. But the meditator doesn't care about that. He eats when he gets hungry, sleeps when he gets sleepy, argues when he feels like arguing. And he doesn't hang on anything too long. He may be aggrieved or peeved about something that's happened to a large extent. Ending perhaps in a screaming match with somebody, or a sullen silence where he just goes inside to get away from the world. And he goes into his own emptiness. Really, there's nothing to learn with the empty mind, except that the full mind that you usually have is so incredibly full of shit that if you follow its lead, you're going to get into trouble. I can't imagine a kid graduating from college with an economics degree, enters into a job market then, where he's no longer king of academia, but he's a pawn in a vast empire of pawns and knights and bishops, which we all know it's kind of a common mold we're all taught to fit into, so that we know where we are in life and what we want to do. And we can recognize people on other paths of knowledge or no knowledge or whatever. and are at peace with that. But the real truth is, there is no truth. And you have to even beware of this concept that there is no truth. That is the conclusion of Wei Ning, the sixth patriarch. The only news is there's no news. The only truth is there's no truth. You be aware of that concept. And you give away all concepts. And you start to live in a different world. It's a far more peaceful world. Because your mind isn't agitating you. But it doesn't have the storm and vinegar normal human life, which is a constant set of judging, measuring, evaluating, striving for some goal or another. Instead, all that's disappeared into yourself. And your task becomes finding out who and what you are. Ian, after all this time, have you any idea who or what you are? Cassie, who or what are you?
Absolutely no idea, Ed.
Is that okay with you?
It's actually really good. Really like
It's what?
It's really good. I really don't want to know who I am.
What about you, Mark? I can see you're an inveterate intellectual. I bet you've read every book in the Library of Congress twice.
Well,
What is life like for you now?
If one accepts the premise that one is not the body and one is not the mind, then it makes sense that that the real experience, the deepest experience, is not to have a present, not to have a self, because we're not the body, we're not the mind. Why should there be a self there? We're being animated by something other than the body and the mind. We're being animated and lived through by the totality. So if the totality is in charge, then I can relinquish my mind, which is a pseudo in charge. It's a fake news being in charge. It's a fraud. It's just something nature fits us with for our survivability. So we'll propagate and flourish and whatever, but at the expense of causing all kinds of. Well, I mean, it all boils down to whether one wants to live as a contracted being spiritually or without the contraction. That's what it all boils down to. And if one is lucky enough to experience the life without the contraction, then one stays there. But it's easier said than done. Go, okay, how do I get to this part, Mark? Oh, that's the devil's in the details, But I much prefer where I'm at now than where I was even 2 years ago. When I was at the time 2 years ago, I was saying I was totally cooked. I was free. I was, but I've deepened a lot since. And I'm just going to conclude by saying that a lot of what I think have been developed, what I've been improving on, in the last 2 years is learning to live the reality. So not, when I'm deep in meditation, it's easy. It's always been easy. But like you used to talk about bringing it to the marketplace, bringing beingness to the marketplace and being both at the same time. So that's where I'm at now, like deepening that experience of being both at the same time and not contracting back into the old self just because I'm doing things out in the world with others, not falling back on the fraud of contraction. So, of course, that's a long-winded answer, but I filled in a few minutes of content there. But
are you able to encapsulate the nature of human existence within 50,000 words or less?
I just did. Did you hear what I said? But yeah, the totality is in charge. So if the totality is in charge, why should I have any knowledge of who I am? Or why should I have an experience of a manager of life within me if I'm not really in charge? That's just a dream. That's just a fantasy.
Can't stop you from talking, can I?
No, I've learned from the master.
Now we see Spencer's cat.
So cute.
Sal, what about you? Who or what are you? Give me the short answer, not like Mark does.
Yeah, exactly. I am this.
That's it?
That's right. That's it. I am this.
Point to this.
Yeah.
Adam, who or what are you? Or what are you?
I always feel like I just woke up in class and the teacher yelling at me to write on the chalkboard the answer of everything I just missed during the lecture.
Yeah, I know the feeling.
Especially with this question, the insoluble question. I have no clue. And that's all right.
Chris, what about you? What do you got for me?
While you're asking other people, who are you, or what do you think you are? I don't know. And I'm learning more that I don't know. I'd much rather not know than know the false. Like I used to be, I knew who I was. I was my mind, I was my career, and I was my whole world of the outside, and I had that identity. And coming here and losing that little by little, identity with the outside, the identity with the Chris. It's freeing to get rid of all that trap, that construct that was holding me down. But it's also scary because that's what I'm used to. And being free and becoming more free of what I'm not can be scary because there's nothing else there. It's like being in a cage and you walk out and there's nothing there. But the nothing is real. and what I thought was false. It was just a false identity with my mind and the world. So it might be scary, but it's free. And that's where I'm at, little by little.
Yeah, what he said.
What about you, Jackson? Who the fuck are you?
Well, I thought of what Hanuman said to Rama: when I don't know who I am, I serve you. When I know who I am you. I guess to go off that more, as long as there's fluctuations in the mind, I guess I think I'm something. And in those moments that there are no fluctuations, there's nothing, yeah. I am you.
Another question you have to ask yourself is, all that busyness of my mind, trying to understand how things work and what the world is, what I am, would my life be easier if I just wasn't concerned about problems like that? What if there was no question that drove me and my attention and my agenda? What if I could just be without spinning around, harassed and pursued by dozens of different desires and agendas and things to be done? Would it be like just to come to rest and have no ideas anymore? Just live. I used to ask myself that many years ago when I was studying with the great Zen masters that came from Japan and Korea. They tended to ask questions like that. I idealized several of those Zen masters and other spiritual teachers. Others I found useless. To this day, I can see they and I were all full of shit. Now those questions are all gone and I'm free. Free to just sit and do nothing and just feel myself. And a strange thing began happening a few years ago. Which was the birth of a huge new experience of power within myself. It invaded me. But it didn't cause any upset to be invaded. I just got filled with a sense of power, of centeredness, of being rock-like. And that the sense of power that if I wanted to change anything in the world, I could. But there's nothing I wanted to change. That sense of power has persisted. Sometimes still, I think I'm wasting my time by studying some subject or another. When I reach that realization, I just smile, rest, and sort of chuckle and say, I caught myself once again before it became too late. All of the old people here, I don't mean literally old, but old in the satsang, you all look the same to me. You're dead. And I appreciate that. You're not rushing anywhere in your mind or your attention. You're reluctant to move outside of yourself because it feels so delicious to be living inside yourself. And you don't want to destroy that by start thinking about something. Because you know that what thinking does to you, it nails you into your forehead or into your brain. And there's no real happiness there. What there is tasks and goals. And those are imagined things. They're not real. They're judgments you give yourself or someone gives you when you think about it. Think it might be true. But to experience yourself by yourself and be able to hold on to your seeing or feeling when you're doing this becomes very transformative. You find out you don't understand life anymore. You don't understand truth. You don't know anything. And yet you're happy. You're happy. Be happy. Because you're free of your mind. Except for that one thought. Who or what am I? That pervades you. And you don't know. And then you can hear Sansunim talk and say, there is no truth. It's all empty. You're empty in a true sense. There's not even mind there. You're just sitting inside yourself, feeling how great that feels to be yourself without a thought in the world, without a question there at all. And by now you're so advanced in spiritual training and in the world, that if people ask you in a very short period of time, you can give 10 or 11 definitions of who you are in an absolute sense. But you don't. Because that would take you back into the world of the mind. And living in the world without the mind is quite an experience. You see how unnecessary the mind really is, and how much of a mess it makes of your life. And the Zen teacher misses all of that. He reduces everything to what is there for lunch? Or dinner. Depends on the time of the day. He thinks only about the activity that he appreciates. Sitting in meditation or eating. You become simple-minded. And you don't accept anything that your mind or anybody else tells you about the nature of reality. For you, the whole concept of reality is broken because you notice nothing lasts. The world you see now certainly doesn't seem like the world you saw 20 years ago. You've changed. What you thought was important 20 years ago is gone. So, anybody that would want to state anything differently from what I'm saying, and saying, Ed, you missed the point. You're utterly stupid. Go fuck yourself. And I'd say, okay, what is it you want? Let's measure. Consider the point of view that the thinking mind wastes your life in thinking, and you miss your own beingness so much. But practicing meditation, isolated, can get you back in that, into your body, into your self. That's not with the word self, the selfless self, the sense of me. And you'll notice the obvious difference. The demeanor of a rabbit, a dog, chicken, turtle. Each one lives its life differently from a different perspective, yet they each have a perspective. Even the turtle has a way of viewing the world that allows him to live in that world. What does your shirt say, Sal? What's the word before happy?
Hey.
Hey?
Hey, happy. It says, hey, happy.
What does that mean? I got you.
It means that there's always, in every moment, an ability to recognize that you can be happy and free.
And how do you do that?
Let go. Surrender. Allow.
Surrender to me, to Ed?
Of course, of course.
We could make this a group thing. I'll hand out surrender permits.
Sounds good.
Real surrender is when you no longer participate with your mind, except when it's necessary. You don't think anymore. You be. You start exploring your life. And I don't mean by thinking about all the things you did in the past or could do in the future, but you immerse yourself in your own body without saying anything about it. And just drop into your experience of your body, into your chest and your gut, maybe your legs for a little bit. And the further down you go, the further you get away from your mind. And there comes a time when you're able to grasp the whole thing, your innerness and the outward world at the same time. And able to immerse yourself in both at the same time. Mind and no mind. Truth and no truth. But fearlessly. There's no fear. And in this life, you take a look at where you are, how simply you're living. I own 2 houses. One I rent out, the other I live in. The rent and Social Security leave me free to do nothing. And doing nothing, I go to sleep like a baby at night. And wake up in the morning with no mind. And thankfully nothing to do. There's no schedule. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. Nothing to achieve, no understanding there. I'm an ignoramus, an ignorant fool, but one who is happy. I'm a happy, ignorant fool. And you say, wow, that's an impressive thing to achieve, being nothing and a fool. And then I say back to you, yes, it is. It's very hard. And once you achieve it, you don't want to let go again. I think Eddie must be at a bus stop. There's so many people here. Sal, this sign was up there too short of a period of time. What did you ask? What did you say?
If I may, I listened to your previous talk about, encouraging people to be unemployed, or if employed in an extremely low stress job. And I think I hear everything that you're saying, and I can drop into that space after practicing this for 14 years. Yet the thing that every time pulls me out is a sense of financial security. That is the only thing, and the cost of living just weighs so heavy on me. And any job you talked about, being a security guard at a museum, none of those jobs anymore will give any sort of security for a young person. And so even if I was to go into that role, and even if I was to sit there and just be deeply at peace, I would still, for the rest of my life, be worried about what would that mean for me long term, especially as someone who's dealt with health issues my whole life. And what would it mean to not have that security of two houses, one that I can rent out, not even a security of an apartment that is fixed financially or rent-wise. So bit of a monologue, but yeah, that's what keeps me up at night.
I worked a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't work much because I don't like it. But I worked to put myself in this situation with two houses for many years, more or less as an undercurrent of understanding, without deliberately doing that much, except making sure they're all paid off. I think you underestimate what you're capable of doing if your mind is set to do it. And in that,
sorry, go ahead.
Being able to just rest in yourself. There's something that happens to you which is more than just peace, but a sense of completeness and of immense power within your own life force that's always there, but usually not seen or felt. But when you're silent, when you're not thinking, and you're not even paying attention too much to the external world or things inside, you feel the boiling up sometimes of that power within you. And it takes your breath away, how much power is within you. And repeated exposure to this sort of builds an armor against anything that could go wrong in the external world. And even if you didn't accumulate two houses for yourself, you've accumulated the attitude towards the world that will help you. Just not believe that it exists external to you. And that part of that is by watching the world with no mind. And you begin to find out that the feeling of existence is laid there by your mind and its understanding. But there's a place of not thinking and of no mind that not only is a philosophy of peace, but it takes the anxiety away. You don't know what you are, but what you aren't is very powerful. You don't know what it is. You don't know who you are. But now that's okay with you. Just to be nothing special. But at the same time, magic happens all the time that you don't understand anymore. It just happens around you. I first noticed this at Mount Baldy. Mount Baldy is at about 5,000 feet. And the year I was there, it snowed a lot. And the only work we had to do was to shovel all the trails in the Zen Center, which there were many buildings there. So there was a lot of shoveling that had to be done. But I figured a way out. I had the ability to wake myself up about a half hour before they came in and woke me up with a gong at 3 or 4 in the morning. I forgot what it was. And I walked up into the Zendo and began sitting in meditation in the Zendo. And nobody bothered me. Nobody said, Ed, go out and shovel the snow. No. I was far too precious. I was sitting in meditation, wanting only God and enlightenment. Actually, all I wanted to do was go back to bed, but I couldn't do that till the end of the day. But I got out of doing the shoveling, which I thought was a coup of his sort. What have you to say?
Not much. Delightful.
Know what?
This has been delightful.
This satsang or the last few years?
Satsang.
Good. Jackson has a cat. Wow. I know he's enlightened.
He's Carrot.
What?
His name's Carrot.
Carrot? So it's a green cat, right?
No.
So I see that some of you feel at rest. But it's more than just a trip to get to a place where you can handle life better. But it's a journey into darkness. You learned that almost everything you had learned up to that time was wrong. It seemed bent. It seems so directive and unnecessarily so. You become relatively simple-minded. And you're at rest and at peace with yourself. Because you realize there's no understanding to be had. There's only you to be experienced and the world to be experienced. And based on years of doing that, you do come to conclusions automatically without thinking about it. And your life can become magical for a while, for a few years. As all this new stuff becomes usual. But what really happens is you've skipped out of the mess that everybody else makes of the world in their own lives by having a mind that's too directed and too caught up in procedures and understandings. And instead, you become so fluid that you can meet reality as an equal rather than as a supplicant, wishing for something to be given to you. Because in this emptiness, you have all the peace and acceptance and rest that you could possibly want. There's no tension in your body, no tension in your mind. You're free of it all. Freedom. 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 That's what Robert's last words were, that they could hear, was freedom. 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 And it never gets old. It never gets old. It gets deeper and better. And for some fortunate people, they go through 4 or 5 years of feeling extensive energies throughout their whole body in different ways, in different flows, and the puddles that just stay there. But they all feel wonderful to be experiencing them. While they're happening to you, if you don't watch out, you become very arrogant because of these wonderful things that are happening to you that other people never talk about. Anyway, I love you all. And the homework is for you to do nothing for the next few days, okay? Don't knock yourself out doing anything. Take the few days off. But I think a lot of us here have been off for a long time. But for you new people, this is your chance to join a group of losers that have nothing to do and nowhere to go, but are deliriously happy. Well, maybe that's a bit much. Take care. I love you all. Bye-bye.